Good afternoon. It's very nice to see a full room and people in person. I would also like to thank the Beta Park for hosting this 47th session of the Bhutan Dialogues. It is a real pleasure for me to be here today. And I would like to start with a quote from His Majesty, the King, to set the stage for today's discussion. As we grapple with the challenge posed by the pandemic, we must not lose sight of the many important national tasks ahead of us. Preparing our people for the future is one such immediate task. Prior to COVID, tourism globally was one of the largest and fastest growing industries in the world. But the pandemic changed all of that in just a few years. Unfortunately, Bhutan has been brutally hurt by COVID in regards to the tourism industry. But like any crisis, there is always a silver lining. And building back the tourism industry here is one that can be done that's going to be more green and more sustainable. There are opportunities that we can find in the midst of a crisis. Today you will hear an in-depth discussion on tourism and how it is going to be handled as the country opens up. Today our speaker is going to be Mr. Lotay. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Yangphel Adventure Travel. And Carmen is a staunch supporter of developing sustainable tourism as well as community-based tourism in Bhutan. He's represented Bhutan also as the Vice President of the SARC Chamber of Commerce and has worked as a steering committee member for the South Asia Economic Conclave. Our host today is Dr. Phuntsho. He is the president of the Lopen Foundation and also the founder of the Shenzhen Agency for Bhutan's Cultural Documentation and Research Project, which aims to prepare a audio-visual documentation that supports local communities to keep and preserve Bhutan's rich cultural heritage for future generations. Again, today we ask, and I think some of you are return people who come to listen to the Bhutan Dialogues, we ask that you keep your questions short and concise. For those viewers that are with us online, please put your questions into the chat. They will be consolidated, and then they will be answered at the end of the session as usual. And thank you again very much for joining us in this 47th session of the Bhutan Dialogues. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you with us for this 47th session of Bhutan Dialogues. We have been thinking about having you for this discussion for quite a few years now. And I think it's so appropriate that you are here today because after 2 years of economic downturn, so to say, we are now looking up the economy in general, particularly the travel industry. So it's, I think, so appropriate that we talk about it. While it's important we bring back the economy and travel business, Bhutan has also been well known around the world for pursuing a very holistic, sustainable economic development. So I think before we let ourselves loose and almost go mindless, it's important to sort of remind ourselves of what we need to do as we open up and start to go back in. And you are a real sort of doing expert in the travel industry, being Yangphel for so many years. I can't remember how long you have been at Yangphel, but do tell us a little bit about yourself in Yangphel and how you sort of came to this industry.
Thank you, Dr. Karma, and thank you, Ms. Karma, and the team for having me here today. It's such a privilege. I would like to, on the onset, qualify here that I'm here in my own personal capacity and do not represent any institutions or organizations that are there in the country as far as tourism is concerned. But having been in the industry for so long, I'm very happy to be participating in a dialogue, particularly that pertains to sustainable tourism and community-based tourism. very passionate about it. Yangphel has been in business, the company I represent has been in business for almost more than 3 decades. And ever since the beginning, our belief has been in sustainable tourism and also community-based tourism. Ms. Carla has put it right that COVID has not spared Bhutan, and the tourism industry in particular was brutally hurt, as you mentioned. And that's why it is, like Dr. yourself had mentioned, that before we become too rusty, and this has been a journey of more than 2 years. Back in March 2020, COVID came, our international borders were closed, and now we are in 2022, it's over 2 years without any tourism. As far as I'm concerned, I've been a tour guide, a lifelong tour guide. As much as I manage the operations within the company, I've been a tour leader, leading trips all over Bhutan. And that's where my passion for sustainability in tourism as well as community-based tourism comes. During the COVID period, back in March, when we were hit hard, our company had to be very concerned and look at the issues and concerns of close to 300 employees for our hotel as well as adventure travel and all that. We had close to 300 employees. And not knowing much about COVID those days, we thought we will sail through it in about a year. And that is why we relieved all our employees by May, but we paid them for a year, thinking after a year we will get them back. But we were proven wrong. The world over was very hurt, and Bhutan was no exception. Now it's easily into the 3rd year of COVID. And as far as our staff and all are concerned, while the COVID continued, a lot of them have to claim their benefits like Provident Fund, gratuity, and all that from the company. And they had some cash in hand. And some of them opened up shops, they bought taxis, they're driving taxis, they got involved into construction. Some of them have become day soups, and some of them have gone back to the village, and some of them took part into upskilling and all that. And during the time that we were hurt, and as long as we were able to take care of them, after that, they had to undergo and become the recipient of very kind kilu from His Majesty the King. If it were not for the kilu, then we were not quite sure where we will be at the moment. And you're right to say we were brutally hurt, and it could have been a disaster. But His Majesty's kilu rescued everyone.
So now as things look more positive, tourism industry has lost quite a lot of people. As you said, a lot of people driving taxis or taking on carpentry, or maybe a lot of them even moved out of the country, exploring new opportunities. So as things open up again, is the travel industry in general and Yangphel in particular ready to cope with the challenges? Are there preparations being done?
Right. So, almost 2.5 years break from what you normally do is not a joke. It is very difficult, and it will be difficult to bounce back and come back to it. But then, company tourism stakeholders, with the news that it may open up soon, they're all very excited, very passionate about what we do. So, particularly at Yangphel, and I'm sure it is same with other companies and hospitality stakeholders also, we are all gearing up, trying to become ready. As we speak this weekend, for us at Yangphel, we are rounding up about almost 30 of our employees, guides, trekking staff, drivers and all. We're going for a retreat to Lotay, and we will get together and see what we remember from 2 years ago, and we will revisit like a refresher course. And we also need to see of all these people that have gone, and are they still ready to be back in tourism industry? Have some of them moved on? If they have moved on, how do we fill that gap? Those are very important questions that we need to address. And similarly for the hotels, so many employees have left, and only the core people have been kept. And now there is the re-recruitment is necessary. And the worry is, who is available there? The greater part here is, there is a reskilling program that's happening all the time. And also this big upskilling happening in the hospitality industry. That's why we have some hope that those people will be available for the tourism industry when we are re-recruiting and when we launch ourselves to be ready to host tourists again.
When we look at situations like these days, what we've been going through, one word that comes to my mind is resilience. And see, people in travel industry, people in the Eurostar, when you talk about that, they should have shown a great deal of personal resilience and dynamism. And I think that it is also in the culture of the organization. But then it's the slightly higher, bigger sort of level of the state and the policy making, where we also need to be very resilient and dynamic. So, talking about opening up, especially in the travel sector, we've already missed this spring season. Last year, most people were hopeful that by this spring, things would be back to normal, tourists would have come, and of course, few tourists have come. But should we be actually planning a little bit ahead that we don't miss the autumn season? What would we take from somebody like you, presenting travel companies, planning in advance, especially in terms of opening up?
In the hospitality industry, everything is about being prepared ahead of time. So the question becomes so relevant here that shouldn't we know when we are opening? It is very relevant. But for those of us that ask these questions to the stakeholders or to the authorities, we are also mindful of the fact that we are a small country, and our people that are working into the COVID National Task Force and all that, our belief is they know way better than us as far as the disease, the pandemic is concerned and all that. So I'm sure it is in their mind also, because we are all suffering in this collectively together. The economy, especially tourism, is at ground zero. And how to rebound from that, I'm sure they're all mindful of that. And of course, if we have some advance notice, we are now sort of hearing through the grapevines that we may be, it was in Phuntsho the other day, the chair of the Tourism Council of Bhutan, Lopen, has mentioned, we would probably be open by September. But reading that in the news itself is quite good enough for us.
It's comforting. But
yes.
Then for concrete plans, you need a clear black and white announcement. Isn't it?
Exactly.
If you want your guests to come back in September, it's high time you build the bookings now.
So it is absolutely the truth that we need to have something in black and white, and so that we can plan. Even our national airlines, both Jukair and Bhutan Airlines, are waiting for something black and white, I think, for them to come forward with more schedules in the fall season so that people can book them. And for tour operators and hoteliers and the guides and all, so it's very important to see something in black and white so that they can be prepared. But I think as in the Bhutanese society, talking of the resiliency and the belief in ourselves, we have already, a bunch of us in the stakeholders, especially in the tourism sector, we have already taken for granted we will be open by September. So preparations are on the way. Hotels are re-recruiting their managers, re-recruiting staff, and a lot of renovation and all are being fast-tracked so that we can host tourists during the fall season, so that we don't miss the boat again, because spring is already missed the fall season we would not like to miss.
So, provided, taking for granted that things will open up, we'll probably see a lot of tourists coming in fall, but it will take a long time before we reach the same level as pre-COVID times, especially in terms of our sort of high-end tourism. What is your kind of projection or forecast of those areas? When will we be able to get back to 2019 level?
The good thing is, during the COVID time, Bhutan, the brand Bhutan, has really been escalated. The way we handled COVID during the COVID time, by His Majesty the King, the Royal Government of Bhutan and all that, there were a lot of international press articles and all that coming through. And that also helped, and there are a lot of inquiries that are coming through. But having said that, brand Bhutan is one thing, inquiries is another, but the impact that COVID has had for some time, I think there will be guests that are keen to come, and we will have bookings. But I think to rebound to the 2019 normal, in my personal view, and I think some of my other friends in the industry also share the same sentiments, it's going to take about 4 to 5 years to come back to the normal thing.
And even to somebody like me, tourism is so important for our economy, both in terms of foreign currency as well as employment generation. It's so critical. We have agriculture which employs a lot of people but doesn't generate hard currency. We have hydro which produces income but doesn't generate employment. Tourism is one sort of low-hanging fruit that we need to harness. And even 2019 figures don't seem that sort of ambitious or high. That I was comparing the figures from some other countries, similar countries like Iceland in Europe. They had about 6 tourists per citizen. Now, in our own region, Maldives seem to be doing so well through travel industry. They seem to have 3 people per citizen. Here in Bhutan, we have only 1 tourist for 3 citizens. So, in terms of number, have we actually managed to harness our potential? How far can we go? What do we need to do to increase the benefit of tourism to the economy?
For Bhutan, there's this sound tourism policy of high value, low impact it used to be, and high value now, low volume, we call it. I think that's a very sound tourism policy. And it's almost sacrosanct. We cannot go 2 ways about that. So keeping that in mind, when we are targeting high value, it's always quite difficult sometimes. How do we go about generating high value volume? So there are so many interventions that can take place. Probably the stakeholders, including Tourism Council of Bhutan, that is very involved in the tourism industry. We could be targeting the right tourism fairs. We could be making high quality marketing materials, promotional materials that needs to be done. I think so far we have tried, but not really there. We also need to re-inject the tourism budget into some of those aspects where we can attract high value tourism as such. So far, while we have the policy of high value, low quality, low impact, we also have another regional tourist aspect that we have. So combined between the two, there has been over 360,000 tourists that have visited Bhutan. We can almost say 2 to 1 or things like that. We need to very aggressively relook at those situations. Of course, our authorities and the policymakers have relooked at that, and there is something in place now. Even the regional tourists are going to pay the sustainable development fee, just like the other kind of tourists that we bring in. So the hope is eventually, if we can come at a level playing field in terms of these 2 kinds of tourists that we bring into the country, when that happens, I think our revenue stream will also be much better. So those are the things, and I know there are many other things that can be done. but immediately that comes to my mind is also the payment gateway. It's very important. If there's foreign exchange issues that we need to address through tourism, one is through the tariff and through the cost pricing that we do with the guest. The other one is when people come here to the country, they should be able to use credit card at ease, because that's where the spending power is. And even when they buy a trip, they can buy a $15,000 trip quite easily with credit card, as opposed to going to the bank and doing a wire transfer. So those are the hassles and ease of doing business that we need to look at, which will eventually, I feel, even if the policy is high value, low volume, low impact, I feel the numbers can gradually climb.
In your opinion, what kind of figure would be a sustainable one for Bhutan? We had about 372,000 tourists come in, out of which, as you said, 300 regional tourists, which probably will go down with the sustainable development fee, and that act is in place now, so it will get implemented, and hopefully the number of regional tourists will go down. But if we were to do rigorous marketing and promotion, as you suggest, to capture the dollar-paying tourists, what would be a number that we think Bhutan can easily, Bhutan's infrastructure facility at the moment can easily contain?
We remember Tourism Council of Bhutan involved, and especially an association of Bhutanese tour operators. There were some carrying capacity studies have been done. So in there, those days we felt we could easily cater to 1 million tourists, provided we can spread them out for the seasonality. We have to spread them out during the months. Just now, we have so-called the season March, April, May, and September, October, November. And there are the shoulder seasons, and there are also lean seasons. So we need to spread them out. And when we talk about making promotional videos or promotional materials and all that, we should all collectively come together and brainstorm how best we can spread out the seasonality. So if we can spread out between the 12 months, then I feel we have a carrying capacity close to easily about 1 million also. There were some studies done. I remember those figures have come out.
And that also has to do with regional distribution. Right. At the moment, maybe the carrying capacity gets a little saturated because everybody flocks to the highly touristic centers.
Yes.
I hear this seasonality, the lean season and high season difference will be removed. Is that true?
Yes. So, before I answer that, I think what you talked about, the regional distribution, I missed mentioning that that's critical. Just now we have so-called the Golden Triangle, which is in the west, Thimphu, Punakha, Paro. Tourists hover around here. I can safely say about 80% of the tourists hover around these 3 districts, and maybe some will trickle to Ha in the west region and all that. But places like going beyond central Tongsa, Bhutan, and east, absolutely, almost non-existent. So we need to work on the regional distribution of tourism also. We need to put our heads together, and I think post-COVID, if we are to achieve certain numbers in the next few years, how we want to balance out the regional distribution is very important. And there are people from other districts of Bhutan that are making noise that we are not benefiting, we are not receiving our share of tourism. What can be done? So those are policy interventions that we need to look at. As far as the seasonality is concerned, I think that has been also discussed quite a bit. For us at Yangphel, we are not even calling off-season now. We call it season and peak season. And that is what it should be, probably. The other months are all season. Anytime tourists want to come during season time. If they want to target the October festival or the April festival, like Paro festival, that's peak season. And there has to be surcharge for that. During regular season, that's the other thing. The moment you classify between season and off-season as such, nobody really wants to come during the off-season because we are in the Himalaya, Eastern Himalaya. Suddenly they'll think maybe there's too much snow. They'll think it's below freezing. There's ice, and unless the pricing becomes so attractive, they won't really want to come here during the off-season. So everyone rushes to come during the season now. And then the carrying capacity of the flight, the hotels, number of guides, the transportation, all becomes an issue now. So we need to relook at all that. And I think the stakeholders are looking at such things now. If not, we still have time. We should go into this and discuss those things now.
Let me be the devil's advocate. One of the things which you might brought up is high value, low impact, low volume, which I think is sacrosanct, which is the sort of vision for Bhutan's tourism industry. But then a lot of people wonder whether the minimum daily sort of, package rate right now in GPR, which is being sort of conflated with high value, is the best way to promote tourism. Should we be seeking high value only through such a daily package tourism, or should the state just charge the sustainable delivery fee of $65 or whatever it is upfront, and then let tourists have the choice of either going with the package or without the package?
In Bhutan, at the moment, for the tourism industry, it's a very difficult question, and it's just a question, because within the industry players itself, we have the guides, the hoteliers, the handicrafts, we have the tour operators, the high-end operators and all that. We are all a bit divided as far as that is concerned. This is nothing but the truth. We all don't speak the same voice in the industry. It's all divided. What we need to do is, we need to sit together and rationalize, discuss it and rationalize it. I think tour operators and hoteliers and guides and handicrafts, they all need to be brought under one umbrella, in one room, with a moderator or with somebody. It could be Tourism Council of Bhutan, it could be an independent body. We should be brought together and discuss it. As long as I feel we try and protect this sacrosanct policy of high value, low volume or lower impact, I think whether it is NTPR or whether it is something else, as long as it protects the sustainability of tourism in Bhutan, the high value, low volume policy, as long as the community benefits in some way or the other, as long as stakeholders benefits, as long as it doesn't promote mass tourism, I think we should be open to discussion. Of course, there are groups that will say currently NDPR is the one that will protect high value, low volume. There are the other groups that are saying maybe we need to relook at that. So I think maybe if you relook at that, and if what I have mentioned are kept in mind and discussed, and as long as we come under one roof and discuss it and try to understand each other, which is for the sustainability and future of the country, I think we should be open to certain discussions that should be.
It was 2 years ago I read a publication brought out by the Tourism Council of Bhutan, which basically lists all the problems associated with the minimum daily package rate, undercutting, bad debts, poor diversification, and also the hoteliers and the restaurateurs and the guides and the drivers all being more at the mercy of the travel agents who seem to hold them in control. But then, even beyond such business issues, as a cultural scholar, as a specialist in mind science, let's say, it's quite contrary to human psychology to sort of go on a holiday, pay good sum of money, and then be in this sort of very constricted regime. I've never actually been on a holiday through a package, except in Tibet, because there was no other choice, no alternative. I don't know how many Bhutanese would themselves want to buy a package to go to travel in Thailand or India or wherever. I mean, you want some degree of liberty. The whole idea of a package seems to go against human psychology, especially when they want to go on a free holiday, open, the time where they want to feel free and liberated. then of course no amount of effort we put into promoting Bhutan and telling people this is not the visa fees. Most people seem to think this $250 is the visa fee, and that sort of puts away lots of people. So I don't know how you view this. Have you been on a holiday where you chose to have a package over a free one?
When you travel outside, and like you did, Doctor, I've also been on some of the package tours out in the West or even in Asia, like Thailand and all that. There are types of packages that you can buy into, where some you pay in advance and then you are all the way, just like in Bhutan, guided. You have lunch in this restaurant, you'll be using this guide, you'll be using this car, you'll be dropped back to your hotel at this time, you'll be picked up at that time. It's very much like Bhutan. There is the other kind, where you actually pay a fee and go into a certain destination. Then you have a choice of eating a meal in whichever restaurant you want to go to. You have a choice of going and watching a show. There are multiple shows. You buy that ticket and go watch them. So all those things are there. But getting back to the MDPR a bit, I think it's about how we educate. The communication is key here. How we communicate to our principal agents and operators abroad. Some of them want to listen, some of them don't want to listen. Some of them will sell that as the fee, the $250. Some of them will definitely throw in saying the tax, the SDF is actually 65. The others include 3-star hotel, guide, and all those packages. So there are these both things. So what is important is the communication.
Yes.
What is important is also, as I mentioned before, one of the things that we have to really work as a Bhutanese citizen in a small country where we value culture, tradition, environment, and our GNH in business, very critical. We should not be out there commercializing everything and trying to sell the soul of our country. As soon as it becomes too commercialized, as soon as a business person tries to sell the soul of the country for temporary gains, that will be the end of everything. But like I mentioned, if it is for the sustainability of tourism in Bhutan, if it protects the high value, low volume aspect of the policy, sacrosanct policy that we have right now, and if it benefits the stakeholders, everyone together, not a certain section of the group, I feel there's no harm discussing it. And you come to a room, and through this Bhutan dialogue, I would like to still say we have time. The stakeholders, we should come together in a room and we should discuss it. Look face to face, discuss it, and why I think certain things are important, why you think certain things may be important, and maybe have a common ground for the sake of the country.
Well, one of the other points, again, bringing in psychology, that some people have raised is when you charge a fixed amount, like $250 or $200 US, then the guests are not willing to pay or spend anything more. So there's very little out-of-pocket expenses. Even if the payment gateway, as you suggested, would improve, if people are not encouraged to spend, eat where they like, try things for themselves, the overall benefit of tourism to Bhutan may still remain limited. All we would get would be those $250 that.
Again, back to this, very debatable, needs to be discussed together. There are certain tours that are organized by certain operators where the MDPR is applied, and over and above that, the out-of-pocket funds, the use of the upgraded hotels. Within the MDPR, just now you're eligible for a 3-star hotel. But there are people who will book 4-star, 5-star, and luxury hotels and all that, and those can be charged additional. So those are the things there. At the same time, when we have an NDPR, that's a lot of 3-star packages also come. So whether the tourism, if the tourism policy is high value, low volume, then how do we look at a different model that will cater to high value, low volume. That needs to be discussed, re-looked at, and we need to hear out each other. There's no hard and fast rule as to that MTPR needs to prevail for so and so years and things like that. There's no hard and fast rule that MTPR needs to be removed and things will become better. As long as we protect the high value, low volume, as long as we don't sell the soul of our country, as long as sustainability is taken care of and community-based tourism and all prevail, I think there should be dialogues. Things can happen only through dialogue. So far what has happened is we had dialogues, but not serious enough to understand each other. I think COVID time is a good time. A lot of discussions have taken place formally or informally. We still have time to look at it and we can discuss those. Yes. But one of the requests to the authorities from the stakeholders is, no matter what is applied as a change in the tariff system or discounts and all that has come in the forefront recently, I think an advance notice is critical. It's very important because tours are planned in advance, package tours are done in advance, brochure trips are printed a year in advance. So all those pricing costs, everything has gone in. And just about when the guests are about to come, we cannot just tell them that prices have changed because of a regulation. There should be a way out.
Talking about such decision level, policy level challenges that the travel industry faces. I'm sure you have many to share, but I've also heard someone, like a senior economist, to say that the way the Tourism Council Secretariat functions also needs to perhaps change. That it shouldn't be any longer a bureaucratic government office with civil servants, but rather have a corporate work culture with clear deliverables.
Yes.
What do you think?
So as far as the Tourism Council of Bhutan or Tourism Council of Bhutan Secretariat is concerned, just now the governing structure is such that the board is there. It's chaired by the Honorable Foreign Minister. And of course, there are a few government officers sitting on the board.
I used to know that.
Not but there are adequate private sector on the board. The president of BSTS, Sustainable Tourism Society, president of APTO, president of Hotel, president of Guide Association, they are on the board. Now, pertaining to answer the question, is it time to relook at something? Perhaps yes. Why not? Because Tourism Council has prevailed so far, and it has taken its course and done its share of work so far. Going forward and reflecting things on the COVID time, going forward to the changing times, what can the Tourism Council be like? Maybe if there's a relook also, there will be no harm. COVID time is the time. 2.5 years is going by. That is the time we need to relook at so many things in tourism. Not only tourism, in all kinds of businesses that we do. If we can come out stronger and better out of this COVID situation, we were all brutally hurt during the COVID time. But if there's something light at the end of the tunnel that's coming, there's a silver lining that thing. We are all for it. And silver lining is all, it just doesn't appear. We have to work for it during the COVID time, and now we still have some time. I think there should be heads coming together, speak the thing, and maybe Tourism Council of Bhutan role also, what it should be going forward. Those also can be looked at, they should be.
Let me ask you a bit about the more sort of future-looking sustainable practices that you have brought in Yangphel. I personally been always an admirer of Yangphel. It's a very successful, very socially responsible, environmentally friendly local company. And I think the COVID has been a very, very difficult time for you. You had to sort of dig deep into your pockets and use that as savings. So maybe at such times of desperation, sometimes you even had sort of rethoughts about reconsiderations of the sustainable practices you have introduced. But I think it's so important for us to persist, in spite of such challenges. So, for instance, Shivaling, is the only private, perhaps non-municipality place where you have your own sewer system. Is that right? Please tell us a bit more about how you integrate these environment-friendly practices into your business.
At Yangphel, one of the things that we had very consciously done is we were very mindful of GNH in business. Whenever you say GNH, it's the four pillars: environment, culture, tradition, good governance, and all that. It's very critical and important. And keeping that in mind, it's about taking care of your employees also, to the best possible, that they're happy with the company and company is happy with them and all that. And if we are to take care of brand Bhutan, which is wonderful at the moment, each one of us, private companies or individuals, need to play an important role. So at Yangphel, what we did is, with the trekking that we do and with the hotel, the Shivaling hotel that we opened back in 2014 and 15, we launched a very strong sustainability program wherein we involved an Australian sustainability expert and brought in. We wanted to formalize everything that we were always doing and even make a guidebook, like a catalog kind of a thing. So what we do there is we actually measure our electricity, we measure the water that we use, measure the waste, and of course, like Dr. mentioned, we put up a very expensive in-house sewage system whereby all the grey water and all your bathroom things go in and it's like purified in that system, and the clean water comes out that we use to water the plants. And also it's about taking care of your waste, like recycle, reuse, and all that. And what we do is, during the season time at Shivaling, about 70 kgs of our waste go to the landfill. Ever since we embarked on that sustainability program at the hotel, all of our employees are trained in taking care of waste and waste segregation. Now, of course, 2 years was COVID, we didn't do anything, but back before COVID, only about 4 kgs of our litter and waste go to the landfill. So that is a big deal for us. And we are of the hope that there will be more players like that doing that. So which will save our environment and what you do at home. Because for us, charity begins at home. We have to do some things at home that can be an example. For example, on the treks, we empower all our trekking staff to bring back litter from the mountains. And once they're in the office, we actually weigh all the litter they bring in, and it's a competition. The first prize is 15,000, second is 10, third is 5,000. And we even send the shopping list with them, and when they come back, our office people painstakingly compare what is left up there, what is consumed, and what's brought back. And at the end of the season, we reward them. This has been so positive that our staff end up picking other people's litter and trash and bring it back so it can be weighed and that thing. And for us, as an investment, we said, yes, go ahead and bring it back. If you have to bring one more yak or one more horse for that thing, we will pay for that. So those kind of systems we have put in place. And when post-COVID, when business resumes, we would like to even enhance and become better at such practices. So those are the little things that we do, which will help the community, which will help the system, the standard operating procedures that we do within the company to help ourselves and eventually see if it can have a larger interest and help others also.
Not only are such practices so great an example of environment conservation or helping combat climate change and so forth, but especially when you work with well-educated, intelligent clients, maybe this is also a fantastic marketing strategy. Right? You probably get more clients because you do these things with smartness.
Very, very true, Doctor. I think it's only a matter of time. If you keep practicing, have such practices within your company, you will be noticed. Because the kind of clientele that Bhutan attracts, and again, for future we should attract, are conscious travelers. People who want to be experiential, people who want to be responsible. And the COP26, climate change and all those are becoming a big thing now. People are even looking at how many flights they should take to go to a certain destination to travel, because carbon footprint has become so critical and important. So those are the things, and if private sector people, the country as a whole, start practicing such things, we're saying we're not doing it, but we should do it and formalize it. And then people will recognize that's also one way of increasing the high spenders, high value clients that looks at climate change and things like that. It's only a matter of time. You will be recognized and you will be seen. Yes. And I think for the authorities, incentivization of such things are very important.
Is there any move towards EV when it comes to transportation?
Yes. Very interestingly, we keep on researching that. When we first embarked on the sustainability program at Shivaling, I can safely probably say we became the first company in Shivaling to buy an EV car for our general manager. Yes. And that was part of the sustainability program. The general manager should, by example, drive an EV car. We have visited STCB before, and just recently STCB CEO also, and asked him, is Toyota coming up with EV buses? And we have also asked the Ministry of Information and Communication and the relevant agencies how many of those charging stations are put in different districts, so that should we avail EV SUVs to drive around people, we don't want them stranded for the lack of no charging stations. So a lot of things needs to come in place. And I think these are discussed under Tourism Council of Bhutan and some other relevant agencies and all. But the discussions needs to be fast-tracked, I feel, because this is the way forward. Using technology, going green, EV, and all those are very important aspects of high-value tourism within a destination.
Yes. Thank you. Let's open to questions from the audience, both audience here in person and also audience online.
The question that I would like to ask is, what are the new opportunities that will be open for the tourism post during the COVID situation?
Thank you. Very, very good question. And that's the question that we stakeholders ask ourselves all the time, and we also look for answers. One of the opportunities is, I think, during the COVID period, we've had the time to train, reskill, and upskill our employees in certain fields. Like, for example, I can bring out an example of Yangphel. We're going to do trekking in a whole different way. How we package our things from here to take into the mountains, the food, the guest bags, and the horses that we use up there, how we work with the community. We have been researching and doing some work on that. And going up in the mountains, how do we not use firewood? And so many things that are environment friendly and all that. These are re-looked at within our company. And I'm sure there are a lot of other stakeholders, they are doing their own thing also at the moment. One other thing is the products during the COVID time. There are a lot of tourism products that are looked at. Within our company also, we looked at some tourism products like a new hiking destination, like a new cultural experience that we can look at. Like there are tons of festivals all over Bhutan, and the festival date captures only the major ones. We want to go into the nooks and corners of certain villages where there are smaller festivals. That's more experiential we need to look at. One good thing, good news that I want to break to you is the Trans-Bhutan Trail. There is a walking path, hiking path made all the way from Ha to the east, Phuntsho, to the east, and it's almost in 2 weeks or 3 weeks and a month you can walk that. That is one great tourism product. What will happen is There are campsites developed, there are farm stays developed along the way, and the community-based tourism will thrive and prevail on that route. So the Trans-Bhutan Trail, that's the ancient walking path for our forefathers, for our ancestors, and is now revived after 60 years now. So we are all very excited about that product. So some of those are, and of course, some of the initiatives I think the stakeholders are taking, and perhaps at the government level also, is digitalization of the way we do things within our business. Embracing technology, it's very critical. Now, I mean, you cannot do without embracing technology. So many things need to be done. You become that much more efficient, and the young people like yourselves, I think you need to come in the forefront, use technology, and teach the older ones like us what the benefits are of those things.
The first one is, how can tourism engage rural community development in Bhutan? When will Dzongkhaks proactively engage in promoting and competitively attracting tourists to their own Dzongkhaks? And the second question is, do you see the tourism industry bringing in revenue at par or more than hydropower in the future? If so, how can Bhutan do this? And if not, why not?
As far as rural tourism is concerned, it's also about community-based tourism. That's something that a bunch of us are very passionate about. I'll give you an example to whoever asked that question. I think we tour operators and stakeholders in tourism need to be very mindful of the rural population, how we engage them. They should play a big role in it. We should invite them to play a big role in it. Some years ago, before COVID, I remember working with Tarayan. We went down to the Monpa land south of Tongsa, Jambi, and we revived a Monpa festival, and the date is December 10th. And there's a small Monpa museum also made with the working between Travel Trust Organization and Tarayana, and we were there facilitating in between. So this is something the community, the rural population themselves are very passionate about that festival and want to invite tourism. And once tourism is there and they are seen as important, this will enhance their tradition and culture, their languages, the way they dress. They want to showcase more and more, and hence it becomes a revival of thing. So that's why I think when we have this Trans-Bhutan Trail and all that, we need to look at the communities on the trail, and I'm sure they're doing it, and how to revive and engage the rural communities. There are no two ways of succeeding in tourism without engaging the rural communities. Very important. Dzongkhaks is very critical. Tourism Council of Bhutan used to have Dzongkhak tourism officers, but I feel the Dashu Dzongdas in every district, when we talk of the regional balance of tourism, all of them need to make their own pitch of what is available in that Dzongkhak that will be attracting tourism, and then working together with the stakeholders, private stakeholders as well as the government, and work on that level. So no doubt Dzongkhaks and Dashu Dzongdas need to spearhead that initiatives in Vienna. Very quickly, tourism revenue versus hydro revenue. Why not? Tourism revenue, when this pandemic came, imagine how many people lost jobs. Anywhere near 60,000 people were laid off. That came under the books, statistics, right from drivers, guides, hoteliers, all kinds of players, about 60,000. And the employment, that thing is there. And how tourism touches the rural communities. How tourism touches the handicrafts, the arts and crafts and all that. The transporters, the hoteliers and all that. If everything is put together, I feel, and if done in a good way, and if we adhere to high value, low volume doesn't necessarily mean bringing in less people. Low volume means an experiential, bit by bit we can go up to higher volume. But low volume in my context, Doctor, I would think if you're visiting a temple, we don't want 60, 70 people there. It's just like 10, 20 people there, so that they get the right experience there. So that's low volume in a cabin capacity thing. So if those are done and if you really calculate the revenue stream of tourism in so many ways, I feel it will come very close second to hydropower, if not at par eventually.
Especially with the climate change, hydro is no longer as attractive and as sustainable as we used to think 10 years ago. But tourism, now one of the challenges that Bhutan seems to face is most of the visitors are just one-time visitors. They don't return. Bhutan is kind of something on the bucket list to tick off, but we don't seem to build this deeper connections with the visitors. Maybe it's the community link that we have not cultivated well enough. Maybe it's also the wellness and the spirituality that we are actually quite strong at, that we have not harnessed sufficiently to build a deeper connection. How can we make tourism sustainable by building deeper, longer connections? I'm sure in case of Yangphel, I know some of your tour counterparts, they come almost every year and we have a deeper connection. But it's something critical, I feel, that we shouldn't be just on the bucket list, but people should have this long-term connection to Bhutan, to benefit Bhutan in the US.
I think repeat visitation is very critical in tourism. And in every destination, if they can have repeat visits, I think people have already been there, done that, loved it, and they're coming again. That's very important. But how do we keep it going? One way is, like Doctor has mentioned, wellness and rural attachments and all that. It's about building those products. Different kind of products are very important to be built. And now, going forward, post-COVID, and the question that we will ask, after COVID, what we should aim for? We should take it slower. Just now, for people to say that I've been there, done that, they would consume Bhutan in 7 days. No, Bhutan should be consumed in 7 different trips, not 7 days. So this visit, we can show them the golden circuit of Thimphu Power Punakha. Next visit, central Bhutan, then east, and things like that. So many products can be built in those, and we should take it slow. Tourism is now about taking things slowly now. And the kind of tourists also have changed. Now the multi-generational people are coming back. The groups are becoming smaller. Friends are traveling together. And there's no more of that really big groups coming together. And post-COVID, one of the things that's going to change is probably the groups are going to become smaller. They would like to know who they are traveling with and make it more experiential. And Bhutan, as small as we are, and as a brand Bhutan, a bright destination, I think the wellness products and all are great. And I think the government is already looking at it, and so many things are being laid out. And our request is to keep the momentum going and fast track some of those so that it can come out as a solid tourism product for stakeholders, be it from within Bhutan or our counterparts abroad. We can sell those actively now.
My final question that I asked my guest is, what keeps you going? What keeps you on top of things? You are leading Yangphel. Yangphel has retail business, adventure travel, and now also an education hub. It's better. So quite a lot of things to do. How do you manage to keep yourself on top of things? Your mental freshness, your physical agility, a habit, or anything that you do that can help other people also follow the habit or practice?
I used to play a lot of archery, and archery is good for me because I can socialize and network with people. I really love networking, and of course, being in tourism industry, you cannot shy away from networking and making relationships. It's all about relationships these days, be it from outside or be it from within, be it within your community or within certain places that you travel. It's about building the network, keeping the relationship intact. The other one that keeps me going is the people that I work with, be it our own management colleagues or be it our employees. They're all such wonderful people, and we almost all the time have good discussions. good dialogues. We are diverse, thinking differently, but those are the strengths that we bring to the table. And as far as what I do for my fitness and all that, my wife and I are avid, I can't say avid, but we are regular bikers. We try and bike like 2-3 times a week. We walk, and also now a new goal after COVID, so that when the distancing and all are done away with, I would like to join the gym. Yes. Not to be the macho man as such, but just to keep myself fit and keep it going. Because one of the things people are saying as a joke is, if you contract COVID, your brain will shrink. But perhaps those are good for people who have big brains already. but I think when you are in the gym and all, I think they say it refreshes your mind and memory and all that. And at our age, at my age now, I think it's very important to remain physically active so that you have something to look forward to life.
You really travel a bit, David. Have you done the snowman trek?
Yes, sir. In fact, in 2000, just before COVID, 2019, I did my 3rd snowman trek. Nice. And that trek, a lot of young people here and everyone that's listening, I think it's very exciting and good if we can get up on the mountains of Bhutan. This is considered hill. The real mountains are up there. And when you go up there, the eastern Himalaya, the snow peaks that you have, interacting with the nomadic culture up there, the yaks, the horses, and day on day you go across those very big mountains. Like on snowman trek, you have to cross almost 17,000 foot mountains. So going over those, the experience is very different. So I'll encourage everyone to go on the snowman trek, Jumuhari trek or the Laya trek, or smaller treks. Even the Drukpat one I recommend, because you get quite high in a short period of time and you get great views of mountains and lakes there.
Well, we'll count on Yangphel starting a domestic snowman trek for local domestic travelers. Yes. So thank you very, very much for sharing your wisdom, your insight, your experience, such an enriching conversation. And end this session often by citing a Bhutanese proverb. And as we're talking about sustainability today, I thought this would probably be very appropriate. Burma Seasonality, Umka Shutunga. Better have the white milk of the red cow than enjoy the red meat. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us. Have a good evening.
Thank you.